Professional Development Certificate, Educational Management of Students with Disabilities, presented by Dr. Muhammad Al-Rashaida. Before starting the module, let me remind you with some guidelines. To access the recorded sessions and get your certificate of completion or certificate of attendance, you need to register in the ADU community portal. Step-by-step registration will be shared with you via the chat box. Participants who submit the final reflection will receive a completion certificate. The deadline will be 15 December 2021 at 11:59 p.m. Abu Dhabi, UAE timings. Participants who choose not to submit the final reflection will receive an attendance certificate. To have access to translation during the session, kindly download Microsoft Translate. The IT department will provide you with the code during the sessions. During the sessions, you can write your comments in the chat box, or you can use the Q&A option in both AHA Slides or Zoom to ask any questions related to the topic, and the presenter will answer questions accordingly. You can also use the raise hand button on Zoom in case you want to speak. Dr. Muhammad Al-Rashaida received the PhD with the highest honors cum laude from the University of Deusto, Spain. He received a full international scholarship from Erasmus Mundus to study for his PhD before joining ADU. He worked for Deusto University as an assistant professor and coordinator for international projects such as Erasmus. He is also a winner of the Standard Research Award for Special Education in 2018 in Spain. He works with local communities to help people with disabilities to facilitate their inclusion in the labor market. He has established himself as a world-class researcher and has published about 18 articles in high-ranked journals. He also serves in the Journal of Vocational Rehabilitation editorial board. He acts as an external PhD examiner for worldwide universities. Dr. Muhammad's research interests lie predominantly in the disability studies and include inclusion, independent living, vocational rehabilitation and deployment, and disability policy at an international level. Dr. Al-Rashaida, the mic is yours.
Okay, thank you, Maha, for presenting me, and hello, everyone. And thank you at the beginning for joining us today. And actually, I welcome all of you. No doubt that yesterday, Dr. Fteha, and before yesterday, Dr. Andrea, they covered and they provided many useful and valuable information about inclusive education and about special education. Thank you again for interesting in this topic and in special education specifically. So allow me to participate or to share my screen, to share my presentation. Yes. Okay, it's clear. Yeah, you can see my screen now.
Yes, doctor.
Yes, doctor.
It's clear.
Okay, thank you. So today, actually, I'm going to talk about a topic about educational management of students with disabilities. Mainly, the topic is about RTI, response to intervention, and UDL, universal design of learning. And during this presentation, we will have some activities, some questions, and later I will show you the code here that you can scan to answer and participate in our question. Okay, just a minute here. Okay. Now, sorry, what does happen? Okay, now I'm trying to back. Okay, stop. Okay, Just I'm stuck here. Okay, now it's working. Anyway, so the topic today is about response to intervention RTI and about universal design or UDL. Okay, now I think it's more clear. Anyway, today our topic is divided into two main parts. The first one is about RTI. And in the RTI, I'm going to talk about what is the RTI, the essential components, its purpose, the principles of RTI, and the three tiers or levels of RTI or response to intervention. On the other hand, we have UDL or Universal Design for Learning, and here I'm going to talk about the definition, the principles of UDL, and why is important, the benefits of UDL. And in fact, I will come to all questions, and I will try to answer all the questions as much as I can. So as you can write your question, and finally, we will have some questions, and I will try to answer all of them, inshallah. At the beginning here, as you can in this slide, I will start my presentation with the Salem case. And please, during the presentation, think about this case as introduction, as a real case on the RTI. Salem is a first grader who has not yet developed pre-reading skills. His parents, his teacher, and a principal or his principal at the school want him to learn how to read, because the reading is a basic academic skills and is very successful and important for the future. Salem's teacher places a note about his reading problems in his file, and after that sent this note to the second grade teacher. When Salem starts the second grade, his teacher is already concerned about his reading difficulties. And here the teacher in a second grade, she works with him for several weeks to enhance the reading skills. But in October, she concludes that Salem must have a learning disability. Imagine here how the teacher judges on the Salem as he cannot read, as he has a difficulty in reading skills. Imagine, and she said that must have a learning disability, and as a result, she refers him for the evaluation. As you know that in special education, to give a label, to classify or to say that is a person has such type of disability, we need to make an evaluation or assessment for him or her. So in October, she concludes that Salem must have a learning disability. So she refers him for evaluation. After that, in January, IEP meeting, do you know that individualized educational program or plan, conducted or held a meeting about Salem case. As a result, Salem scored at the low end of the average range on both academic achievement and cognitive or IQ testing. Do you know that as an evaluation assessment or as tools, we need to conduct IQ test to know the intelligence quotients for the child or students as an indicator for any type of disability, for example. So, but his result for our Salem results was within the range. So Salem's parents are concerned and are told that their son or Salem does not have a learning disability. Okay, in contrast to the judge of teacher that parents and after making an evaluation and some of tests, concluded that he doesn't have a learning disability. So the parents are relieved to hear that, but then they ask an important question: who will help our son learn to read? This is, I think, very important question, and the parents here have a right to ensure about their children, or on Salem on this case. So the answer for this question, the principal tells the parents that Salem did not qualify for special education. I mean that he doesn't have any type of disability, so he is not qualified for special education, and he will have to keep trying to learn to read in his current class. So my question is, what is the solution for Salem? I'm sure that we have here participants from general educators, special educators, principals, counselors, etc., etc., etc. I'm sure that you have faced many cases or many students like Salem case. So the great news, the good news that we have a solution for Salem, and who likes Salem, called like RTI, response to intervention. And I can say that if Salem had received responsive intervention or RTI in KG or in the first grade, his reading skills might be improved, okay, and he can improve the future outcomes for his academic and other skills. So what is RTI and how we can provide it for students like now? I think that here I have a question here. Did you implement RTI? Have you been implement RTI? Please, yeah, I need all of you to participate. Yes, yes, most of you, yeah, until now, yes, one, yes, no, yes, 2, 3, 5, okay. Thank you to participate. Actually, I encourage all of you to participate, just to help me how I can make our presentation and provided different information. Okay, I can say that, yeah, 18, 20, 14, yes, 15, 20, no. I think that, yeah, the answers yes and no are maybe similar, or like 19, 24, and I'm not sure about the rest if they have participated or maybe have an issue or something like that. So most of you, or half and half, maybe I can say it till now. Okay, thank you. So now let's go to another question. Before starting my presentation, what words come to your mind when you think about RTI? Please, here you can write any word comes to your mind when you think about response to intervention, RTI. So you can write here any words, yeah, to your mind when you think about RTI. Immediate, yes, immediate, yeah, action, yes, action, very good. Assessment, it's very important. action taken. Yes, I think that I like this word, action taking. Support is very important. Yeah, support, because in RTI, now I'm gonna talk about the support that general teachers provided for most of the students, action plan, evaluation. I think that it's very important. Responsibility, yeah, responsibility on the schools, on teachers, on parents, on as well, or mainly on a teacher. Process, yeah, it's a process. Action, evaluation, yeah, support. So maybe the most word, yeah, repeated is support for students' need, supports for students' skills in different academic and different skills and lessons that are provided for our students. Response to intervention, yeah, thank you. Immediate response, yeah, actually this is empowering, yeah, empowering. So this is actually many words. Thank you for participating on this question. So evaluation, support, action. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, here, as you can see in this slide, taking time to get to know students or to know your students can make you a more effective teacher, actually. To find out their names, ages, family backgrounds, and to dig a bit deeper and discover their learning interests and strengths, I think it's very important. So these questions that you have seen in this slide is about your students, and these questions will help to create effective RTI. So you need to know about your students. Who are my students? What do they need to learn? And why are some still struggling? And here we digging a bit deeper to know the reasons why they struggling, and if we implement any intervention or instruction. So you need to know why, and you need to make follow-up and evaluation for your strategy. So what is the RTI? RTI, I can say here that is not special education. Yeah, we need to agree about that. Is it? It is not equivalent to nor a replacement for special education. RTI is a method to determine if a child has a specific learning disability and is eligible for special education. This means that by identifying students' learnings and behavioral problems early, so early is better, to identify students' learning and behavioral problems early. As well, RTI approach is a way to reduce referrals. Do you know that referrals, when we make referrals for a students from general education to special education, so approach RTI is approach a way to reduce referrals to special education. This can be done actually by providing well-designed instruction in general education. Repeat, this can be done by providing well-designed instruction in general education by qualified, effective teachers. So RTI is a framework for organizing the resources of a school to provide appropriate instructions to all students, because there's a misconception about RTI. It's only for students with special needs or people with disability or people with learning disabilities, or here in the UAE called people of determination. No, it's to all students, okay, to all students, regardless they have a disability or doesn't, they are talent, they are gifted, they are English learners, or I mean the cultural or maybe English or a language is different. And here The early intervention when students experience academic difficulties is a key element in RTI. Do you know that the early intervention, early identification as well is a crucial, is a vital in RTI. So a multi-step approach to providing services and interventions to struggling learners. So RTI is a focus on intervention rather than what is wrong with the student. So the word intervention is key to understanding what RTI is. The goal is for the school to intervene, to step in and start helping before a student falls really far behind. So the school can see which students need more academic support. I'm sure that in your schools, either you are a teacher or principal, counselor, you have many students, they need more academic support. So RTI as well is a focus on the solution rather than the problem. So teachers here provide targeted teaching or interventions to help struggling students catch up. RTI is focused on addressing the needs of all students, as I told you before, having difficulty, not just those with labels or they were classified with disability. RTI is a focus on positive outcomes for all students, and this means that many students performing below grade level and don't have a disability. So the RTI process, they can make progress without special education services. RTI, I think that RTI is widely used in schools as an effective way to enhance student learning. And this is because that RTI can help more students, more kids thrive in general education classrooms. And RTI can also help schools save special education resources for kids who truly need them. So schools save special education resources for students who truly need them. This means that because, yeah, do you know that special education services and resources are high expensive, and they need the help, they need assistance, they need different services, different tools, different technologies, etc., etc. And this will be a burden on the school, on the country, and the community, and on the family. So RTI can save these resources for students who need or in fact, they need these services. So with RTI, schools use data to identify students at risk for poor learning outcomes. So a big part, here I can say that, a big part of the RTI process involves closely monitoring student progress. This is actually very important, so the school can see which students need more academic support. And I think that these days, many of the students need more academic support. Yeah, you know that maybe the online teaching, maybe the COVID, maybe the abilities. Yeah, because the COVID restrictions and etc. The situation that we lived 2 years ago or 1 year and a half, affected negatively on the teaching and on the school at the first. So I'm sure that many students need more academic support. RTI is not a specific program or type of teaching. It's a proactive approach. This means that RTI measures students' skills and uses this data to decide which interventions, which instructional strategies to use with your students. Here in this slide, as you can see on the figure on the left here, on the upper left, figure number 1, the National Center on Response to Intervention and RTI has developed this figure or figure number 1, and many of you probably associate the red, green, and yellow triangle or pyramid, as you can see here in the figure number 2, with RTI. In reality, the triangle or pyramid does not represent the RTI framework. It represents only one component, is the multi-level prevention system. Anyway, so essential components of RTI, here we can start by, or the first component is data-based decision making. So multiple data here should be collected regarding students' instructional needs by using screening and progress monitoring data to make decisions and analysis about the instruction. Sorry. So data-based decision-making, the first component for RTI or response to intervention. The second component is universal screening. Typically, all students at the class are assessed 3 times per year. In the fall, at the beginning of the year, in winter, in the middle of the year, and spring at the end of the year. So to identify and to predict students who may experience lower than expected academic outcomes, keep in mind that the purpose of this screening is no way diagnostic. Here, we don't make a diagnosis or to judge on the people that he has a disability or maybe he is talent, he is gifted. No. Here just we collected data on a student's needs, on the instruction, etc. So the number 3, multi-tier approach or multi-tier approach. The multi-tier system is usually represented by a pyramid, as you can see in this in the figure number 2, and the model incorporates increasing intensity of instruction, offering specific interventions matched to students' needs. So as you can see in the figure number 2 or multi-tier approach, here we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 that in the top of the pyramid. And in next slides, I will explains these 3 levels or tiers. The fourth component is progress monitoring to provide information about students' learning rate and the level of achievement, both individually and to compare with their peers. Usually, progress monitoring is implemented with individual students who have been identified at risk based on previous screening. So in summary, RTI is a preventive framework. RTI is not a new name for pre-referral process or referral for special education. So it's not a new name for that. So What's the purpose of RTI? Imagine the purpose or the primary goal, the primary purpose for RTI model is the prevention and remediation of academic and behavioral difficulties through effective classroom instruction and increasingly intense in intervention. So behavioral difficulties, do you know that in students, even at our children and our homes, etc., we face many behavioral difficulties, many behavioral issues with the children, with the students, and they need interventions, they need solutions, they need specific strategies to manage and control these behavioral difficulties or these behaviors actually. Why? Because these difficulties and these behaviors actually they prevent the process of teaching. They will affect on teacher and on the other class. So the main objective of RTI is not to identify students for special education, but rather to help all students to succeed. So all students. So anyway, RTI can help you meet the diverse needs of your students. Do you know, now in these days, we have diverse needs, diverse culture, diverse academic, diverse language, diverse students in your class. So RTI can help you to meet these needs with your students. RTI as well facilitates early interventions and maximize student achievement. In fact, students needing extra support can receive it as early as KG or grade 1, as I told you before in the story of Salem. This will lead to less need for special education services. As I told you, it's very expensive. It needs a lot of people, teams, tools, etc., to provide for students. Higher rates of higher school graduation when we implement RTI early, and when we implement RTI in effective way by qualified teachers, by qualified principals, schools, etc., less joblessness and fewer mental health problems. Why? Because the RTI as well for academic difficulties and for behavioral issue. So in summary, RTI is a preventive framework. RTI, as I told you, that it's very important to provide for your students. Here are the core principles of RTI. In school, if the school successfully implement RTI models with the students, this will improve achievement and behavioral outcomes for all students. So we need all available resources to teach all students. This means that RTI requires a shift in thinking in the areas of students' learning and assessment and instruction. So, for example, learning shift, each student can learn if matched with scientific and effective instructional strategies provided in schools by general educators mainly. So here you can use multi-tier model. Now we will talk in details about these models. So this is the pyramid, as I told you, pyramid or triangle that includes three tiers, three levels, three waves in this pyramid. So what is tier 1? What is tier 1? Tier 1 is at the bottom of the pyramid, At this level, all students receive high quality evidence-based instruction as a part of the core curriculum in the regular classroom. This is tier one. This is the largest here, which means that the majority of students, 80 to 90%, okay, 80 to 90%, and other references or other literature said like 70 to 80. Anyway, just to say that 80 to 90% should be able to excel with this level of support. So as well, teachers should strive to have positive and supportive relationships with all students. This is actually is very important. And positive relationships are important. Why? For students' engagement and achievement. Because engagement, achievement, these actually factors related to schools and related to teachers and etc. So in tier one here, what strategies can I use in tier one or in the level? It's important to use a range of evidence-based practices or instructional strategies to ensure that instruction is effective and meets the needs of most of the students. So here are, as you can see in this slide, just here 5 examples on these evidence-based strategies. The first one is formative assessments. The formative assessments, these are for learning, for planning instruction, and which can take place either before instruction begins or while learning is in progress. So these can include observations, conferences, and discussion with the student, self-evaluations, and learning portfolios. So formative assessments is a strategy that we can use in the tier one. Strategy number two is questioning. Teachers here can use questioning techniques to engage their students and to check for understanding and comprehension. So for example, after posing a question to your students, give them some time to think about the answer on their own. Then let them to discuss the answer with their neighbor or their classmate. They can exchange their ideas with their partners, gain new information, modeling, etc. So the question, another strategy, corrective feedback. When we are talking about corrective feedback, one of the ways students learn is by receiving feedback on their performance, actually. And this feedback helps them to correct their errors so they do not continue to make the same error in the future. Why? Because they have received a corrective feedback from their teacher. Cumulative review, the strategy number 4 is cumulative review. Review what? Review what has been taught monthly, weekly, or even daily to help students enhance their knowledge. And the final one, explicit instruction. And explicit instruction as a strategy, as a way to teach in a direct, structured way. And here we can say that when teachers use the explicit instruction, they make lessons crystal clear. This is, it should be clear, crystal clear. And they show students how to start and succeed on tasks. They also give them plenty of feedback and chances to practice. And explicit instruction consists of sequence of modeling, guided practice, and independent practice. And just here to remind you that explicit instruction, this strategy can be used not only in tier 1 actually, but we can use it across all three tiers or levels. Just to remind you, any question, any something, yeah, you didn't get it, you need more details, just write on the chat, and I will follow up to, or I will try to answer different question. So in tier 1, actually, how can I meet my students' diverse learning needs in tier 1 or in level 1? Do you know that inclusive classrooms have diverse students in academic skills, linguistics ability, behavior, and background knowledge? So it can be difficult for teacher mainly to plan instruction for diverse group. I know that the teacher, yeah, it's so hard for them to plan instruction for diverse group, and this will be an issue for the school, for the principal, etc. So the UDL or Universal Design of Learning, or UDL, and Differentiated Instruction, DI, are evidence-based principles at tier 1 and help to ensure that the needs of all students are met. So let's go through them briefly. UDL, actually, it's a framework that guides the design of curriculum to consider goals, assessments, method, as well as materials for the instruction. But later, I will talk in details about UDL. So let's go to the differentiating instruction or differentiated instruction. So here, the teaching, or what does that mean? Teaching the same material to all students, okay, using a variety of instructional strategies. Or it might require the teacher to deliver lessons based on the ability of each student. So the best way to differentiate instruction is to give students a choice, give your students a choice in how they show their learning. So in tier 1, here different students, we can use universal design of learning and differentiating instruction. Now the question is, what about struggling students? Okay, you are a teacher, you already implemented the different strategies. You used UDL, you used DI, you provided actually different instructional strategies based on evidence in tier 1, and you consider all needs of your students. But after you conducting a test or assessment or screening, now you have students who are struggling. What about them? So all students are screened to identify who are struggling and need additional support. So students who are identified at risk are monitoring using a progress monitoring system. So students who do not show adequate enough progress, those who are struggling, would move to tier 2 to receive more intensive instruction in their area of need. So the answer for what about struggling students, even I am a teacher, I implement effectively different effective strategies in tier 1. So the answer is the students, after making screening assessment, who do not show adequate progress or enough progress would move to tier 2 to receive more intensive instruction in the area of need. Just before moving to tier 2 or level 2 from RTI framework, remember that tier 1 instruction consists of high quality evidence-based instruction for all students in the regular classroom. It involves universal screening of all students 3 times per year, as well as progress monitoring of students who are at risk. So let me just stop to see if I have a question here. Okay, share the comment to screen. Okay, so now, okay, tier 2, as you can see that response to intervention, RTI, tier 2, level 2, wave 2, you are implementing RTI and some of the students are not making enough progress in tier 1. Here's what you should do. What is the tier 2? Tier 2, as you can see that students here receive evidence-based intervention in the area in which they struggle, and usually by the general education teacher. The purpose of tier 2 is to provide supplemental support to struggling students who are not actually responding to tier 1 or in regular classroom instruction. Here the question, who receives tier 2 instruction? As I told you before, that RTI works because not all students need the same level of instructional support to be successful. Here we can expect that 5 to 10% of students need tier 2. So 5 to 10% of students need tier 2. Although other studies, other literature say that maybe 10 to 20, but anyway, the most literature confirms or ensure that 5 to 10% of students need tier 2. Anyway, students in tier 2 can be identified based on their level of performance. So what constitutes tier 2? Tier 2 instruction is more intensive than tier 1. And here, as you can see in this slide, 4 ways to make instruction more intensive. So we have the first one is frequent progress monitoring. So this means universal screening takes place 3 times per year in tier 1, as I told you, in spring and winter and in fall. But in tier 2, only students who have been identified as at risk are assessed. So in tier 1, for all students, in tier 2, only students at risk we can assist, or making a universal screening for students are at risk. Their progress is monitored frequently, weekly or every 2 weeks. Another one is small group instruction. And here, when we are talking about small group instruction, whereas in tier 1, instruction takes place in the whole class for all students or at your class, but in tier 2, takes place in small groups of 3 to 5 up to 8 students for 20 to 30 minutes per day, 3 to 5 days per week, and Tier 2 intervention typically lasts 8 to 15 weeks. Anyway, in small groups, teachers should use evidence-based instructional strategies, including giving corrective feedback, questioning, peer-mediated instruction. And peer-mediating instruction, it's like a peer tutor, or the students as a tutor for the teachers. Anyway, and explicit instruction. The number 3 in Tier 2, we can say here that more opportunities to respond. This means to provide the students with more opportunities to respond, they are more likely to learn and master new skills. So, for example, you can use the choral response here, that when all of the students ask a question and they can answer all together at the same time, orally or written, and so on. The number 4 is reteach and review, and here that reteaching and reviewing concepts taught in Tier 1 in a more explicit manner, and this can be done by providing additional opportunities to review, to practice, and struggling students have the chance to master those skills and catch up to their peers. Just here, remember that Tier 2 instruction is meant to provide targeted support for students who struggle to meet grade level expectations. The goal of Tier 2 is to remediate skills. Let's go to Tier 3. Tier 3 here, as you can see on the top of the pyramid, and if you are implementing RTI and some of the students continue to struggle, okay, and we can see many examples on that, even with the Tier 2, here's what you should do. I mean here, imagine that you have implemented Tier 1, Tier 2, and still you have students struggling, they're facing different so what is Tier 3? In Tier 3, the students receive individualized evidence-based intervention in the area in which they struggle. So individualized intervention in the area in which they struggle. Intervention is usually provided by a special educator, general educator, teacher, resources teacher, or some other specialist. And in some schools, actually, they have a team, it's named like tiered or RTI teams with different names. Anyway, the purpose of Tier 3 instruction is to provide intensive individualized instruction to students who continue to struggle despite receiving Tier 2 instruction. So Tier 3 provides remediation to facilitate the acquisition of skills. Anyway, who receives Tier 3 instruction? 1 to 5% of the students, okay, 1 to 5% of the students need Tier 3 instruction or instruction in order to be successful. Typically, I can say that students in Tier 3 are identified after they have received Tier 2 and did not make adequate progress. So, what constitutes Tier 3? Tier 3, or one of the key principles of the multi-tier system of support, is that instructions becomes increasingly intensive as students move from Tier 1 to Tier 2 and or Tier 3. This means that we started in tier 1 to provide instructions for all students. And if you face, or if you have, based on the assessment screening, that you have students still struggling, so they move to tier 2 or level 2. And if you still have students still struggling in tier 2 and in tier 1, so they move to intensive intervention, intensive instructional strategies in tier 3. So here, as you can see, that we have different ways to make instruction more intensive in tier 3. So frequent progress monitoring. In tier 3, student progress is monitored frequently, weekly, or even twice per week. Why that? To make sure that instruction is matched to the students' need. It also can modify instruction if students are not responding. And here that you need to make a follow-up, or by yourself, by your supervisor, by your principal as a teacher, and follow-up evaluation your strategy to see that if the instruction that you have implemented or provided for your students is effective or not effective, and you need to make a decision about that. So frequent progress monitoring, as well that individualized instruction. Tier 3 instruction takes place in small groups, 1 to 3 students, and if the intervention group consists of more than 1 student, so the group must be homogeneous in terms of the students' skills. I mean that they have the same or similar skills. Unlike in tier 2, the focus was on the overall group needs. In tier 3, the focus is on individual students' needs. So increase frequency duration of intervention, and this means that instructional time can vary between 40 to 120 minutes per day, and intervention can last upwards of 20 weeks. So here, as you can see in this slide, that we have 3 tiers of RTI that we can provide it for all students, tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3. So this figure shows that as well problem solving process that we can utilize throughout the tiers of RTI process. So in summary, tier 1 instruction or maybe designed for all students, and tier 2 includes differentiation and flexible grouping. As well, the lowest 5 to 10% may need additional support with tier 2 intervention, and this is anticipated that 1 to 5 will require tier 3 instruction for intensive intervention. So briefly, the problem-solving process involves the following or different steps, as you can see here on the on the triangle that define or identify the problem. So teachers can identify problems at the whole class, for example, in the tier 1, and the small group in tier 2, and identify the problems, academic, behavioral problems for a few students in tier 3. So analyze a problem, analyzes once a problem is defined. It's important to continue asking and answering questions to determine why the problem is occurring. So this is a problem analysis. implement or intervention design once the problem has been identified, analyzed, so a teacher and team decide how to intervene or step in. Anyway, the last step is to evaluate the effectiveness of the solutions. And this is actually evaluation for the solution that you have provided, evaluation for your strategy in teaching, evaluation for your intervention is very important. So I can say here that after planning, intervening and monitoring progress, it is very vital to essential to follow by analyzing the results and to make making decisions or right decisions. So here you can ask, and as a part of evaluate for effectiveness of the solution, was the intervention effective? Do we continue with the intervention? Do we need to reanalyze the problem? Do we make further instructional adjustments? So RTI is a framework we can provide it for all students, include Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Advantages of RTI approach. RTI is a preventive approach, aims to identify struggling students before they fall too far behind their peers, help ensure students' poor academic performance is not due to poor instruction or inappropriate curriculum. So it's very important, and here I think that we have some misconceptions about RTI, misconceptions about RTI. RTI replaces special education and its procedural safeguards. RTI, in fact, RTI does not replace existing systems for evaluating or to determine eligibility for special education services. So number 2, children with disabilities will be in Tier 3. Children with disabilities can be found in any tier, in fact. Number 3, the model focus only on preventing and not behavior problems. The focus is on learning or behavioral problems. Here actually valuable resources that you can as a reference, as a resource for you if you want to implement and know more details about actually the RTI and response to intervention. So the first one is learning disability online, learning disability of America. Number 2, the National Center on Response to Intervention. And the number 3 actually is the most important one and provide different activities, different strategies to intervention in different tiers of response to intervention. Anyway, just before to continue talking about UDL, just let me check if I have a question here, just to okay, to try answer them early. Okay. Anyway, question. Okay, one question. Actually, it's a long question and maybe needs a lot of discussion. that in this case we need to help him by letting him to work alone among. Actually, if you can help, if they need the students with disability, students of determination, if they need help, so you can offer that for them. But on the other hand, they need to be more independent or to independence on themselves if they can, by providing different training, by providing different services for them and different appropriate tools. So, UDL universal design. I know that the both RTI and UDL, each one need a special session or more one class, but I have tried to prepare both of them because they are related together, and now we will see more about UDL. As I told you before, or as I said earlier, one evidence-based principles is in Tier 1 is UDL, and help to ensure that the needs of all students are so universal design for learning UDL. What is actually the definition of UDL or universal design of learning? Actually, the universal design of learning has been originated from the architecture and from the brain studies architecture. So if you go, for example, look to the different shopping center for the parking, this actually an example of the universal design. But here, what is the universal design for learning? UDL is a framework to help teachers design teaching and learning that supports all students, and UDL helps teachers to create and adjust resources that are inclusive. UDL will look at different in each classroom, and there is no one size fits all. So UDL improve and optimize teaching learning for all people based on different size to learn. Here, what do we change? What do we change? The school curriculum, as you know, includes goals, materials, assessments, methods, each of which can present barriers for some students, and universal design for learning, or UDL, refers to a framework through which teachers proactively reduce potential educational barriers and make the curriculum accessible to as many students as possible. What does that mean? Mean that the curriculum includes goals, includes methods, goals that where you want to reach, the methods, how you can teach, materials, contents, assessments, how you assist your students, exams, etc., discussions, different methods actually you can use. So the UDL is to sometimes, or some students, they have barriers, they face difficulty in these components of the curriculum. So the target of the UDL here, the teachers, they can work to proactively to reduce these barriers and make the curriculum accessible to as many students as possible. And the UDL, universal design of learning, includes three main principles. Okay, the first one is provide multiple means of engagement, representation, and action and expression. So each one has a set of guidelines explaining how to use tools to improve learning. So teachers can use each of these principles to make their information more accessible, okay, to increase student engagement in a classroom, and to develop inclusive evaluations and assessments for all. So let's go through them: engagement, representation, action, and expression as a main principles of UDL. So the first one, engagement. Engagement, it's very, very, very important how to engage your students. So multiple means of engagement, or the why of learning, okay? Engagement, or on another name like why of learning. This principle of engagement encourages educator to use different ways to motivate learning. Motivation, the motivation. If you your students haven't any motivation, even us, if we haven't any motivation for any skill or any type of learning, we will not do, we will not continue, etc. So the engagement motivates different to use different ways to motivate learners. So everyone becomes engaged by different types of tasks and different situations. So each one can be engaged by, for example, by video, by visual, by text, by technology, etc. So each student is unique in his or her learning style and abilities, and in the ways he or she engages in various learning opportunities. So each student is unique. Anyway, here just the strategies or guidelines to engagement. So know the strengths and weakness of your students, specific learning goals. Look here for the word of specific learning goals, not general, specific. Maybe to create and follow classroom routines, to prompts that let students to know it's time to ask for help. So sometimes they need a prompt from your side until they reach to be independent on achieving the task or the skill that you have provided for your students. Anyway, provide a flexible flexible classrooms that you need to differentiate in your strategies, differentiate in different styles and different methods with your students. So here's the message that the first component, the first principle for the UDL is provide multiple means of engagement. Provide multiple means of engagement, differentiate different types of how you can engage your students by displaying videos, by discussion, by talking about their life, etc., etc. So as a teacher, I believe that you have experienced how to engage your students. And regarding the engagement, as I told, as we already all know that the online teaching may be different than face-to-face, but it's maybe sometimes it's so hard to engage your students, and I'm sure that most of you or all of you have this experience with the online teaching and virtual teaching, and maybe at the beginning you have faced many problems how to engage your students, how to bring their attention for your topic or for your class. So and now with technology, so let's back to the technology now, technology tools, different platforms, different programs that we can use to engage our students by watching a video, by games like Kahoot, different actually. You can do either face-to-face, you can make different activities. They love to play, they love to talk to each other. And so the first one is engagement, provide multiple means of engagement. The second principle in universal design for learning. So here, as you can see, some examples and guidelines on the representation, multiple means of representation, or what's of learning. So engagement, why learning, multiple means of representation, or what's of learning, the content. This principle encourages teachers to present information in a variety of formats. So the same concept could be presented in text. So maybe you can present in text through images, for example, through a video, via audio, maybe hands-on activities. This actually, you can use this method to display information in a flexible format, to adapt information for multilingual students. And multilingual students sometimes, they're struggling, or maybe they need more attention, specifically who came from different culture, from different language, etc., etc. So learners may require assistive technologies and devices that aid learning, such as screen readers, automatic page turners, video recognition programs, captioning device to access the content. So the second principle in UDL is provide multiple means of representation, and the first one was the engagement. Let's go to the third one, is provide multiple means of action and expression. What does that mean? Here, how of learning. This principle helps teachers, educators to provide students with a variety of ways to demonstrate what they have learned, to demonstrate what the students have learned. So learners, students differ here in how they navigate through learning environments and demonstrate what they know. For example, some students may prefer to express what they know through written text, visual or oral presentation, or a group project. So options as well, keep in mind, options for physical action and communication are essential. And here, keep in mind that to give regular feedback that helps students to develop goals and strategies to reach them. So UDL includes three main principles: engagement, representation, and action and expression. So I think that benefits of UDL, why is important. Here, the benefits of UDL, instead of a one-size-fits-all solution, courses designed with UDL offer flexibility. As you can see from engagement, representation, flexible classroom, flexible teaching, flexible activities. So UDL offer flexibility. Benefits of UDL can help educators to meet the needs of all students, reduces barriers to learning. As I told you, that the curriculum included like goals, assessment, materials, etc., etc. So, and this may be as a barrier for some students. So here it's important to reduce barriers to learning. And more students are engaged and motivated in their own education. More students are learning in greater breadth and depth, and to help to connect intervention services to classroom curriculum to improve education of at risk. This in general, the benefits of UDL. Here, the RTI and UDL. RTI responds to intervention, a framework, a process for making educational decisions based on at-risk students' success or failure during the specialized intervention. And RTI and UDL differ from one to another in that UDL as a process for making curriculum design decisions to maximize success in the general education. On the other hand, RTI and UDL share the objective of improving educational outcomes for students and are similar in several ways. So first, I can say that both RTI and UDL recognize that poor achievement does not necessarily reflect a disability, but rather may also reflect poor instruction. Okay, so the reason here, not the student himself or herself, is the instruction or the curriculum. Second, RTI and UDL both reflect the understanding that a curriculum, including materials, objectives, assessment, is effective for one student may not be effective for another student. So effective for one student, but not effective for another student. This we need to keep in mind when we are provide teaching. The third one, RTI and UDL treat assessments as something that should inform instruction and interaction. So this is the similarities between the RTI and UDL, and this is the difference. UDL, it's to framework process for making curriculum design, and here for educational decision, RTI on the instructional methods and instructional interventions for all students. So finally, I hope that I enjoyed you have gained some information about these UDL and RTI. And finally, just here, teachers need new knowledge and skills to successfully implement both RTI and UDL. Thus, professional development, PD, professional development and ongoing support within the school is important. In addition, technology may be an important tool. So these as well valuable resources for UDL and different guidelines, different activities that you can find within these actual websites. And I already have shared my presentation on the chat, and you can use these resources during your teaching. Thank you, and I will be ready for any question. And here you can see my contacts, my email, if you need anything. Anyway, just here, I have, before going to questions, okay, just here I have a few questions just to yeah, already started here. In response to intervention RTI tier 3 requires intensive intervention. This is true or false? It's like an exam for all of you, just to to fix the information. Yeah. Yes, that's fine, true. Yes, okay. Response to intervention is multi-tiered system of support available to students with an IEP, individualized educational plan. So, true. No. Here the yeah, let's wait, yeah, a little bit just to see the answers, yeah. So here it's not true, it's false. Why? Because multi-tiered system of support available to students with an IEP or individualized educational plan, it's false. Why? Because it's all the students. Okay, here, what is not a principle of, it is not a principle of universal learning design. Here we have representation of content, expression of content, multiple means of engagement, multiple means of understanding. Let's to see the correct answer here. So still, yeah, expression, multiple means. As I told you before, that engagement that we have, yeah, let me help you a little bit here. Representation, yeah, we have, and action and expression. So the correct answer is multiple means of understanding. So what is the ultimate goal for universal design for learning techniques? Universal assimilation, superior learning skills, eliminate barriers in student learning, increase difficulty of assessment. So what do you think? Yeah, just let's see here the answer. Yeah. Okay, the eliminate barriers in students learning. So all students receive effective instruction in tier 1. Yes, and all students receive effective instruction in tier 1. That's the correct answer. So serves the fewest number of students. Yeah, this to see the answers here. Yeah, from participants. Yes, in tier 3 or level 3. Targeted small group instruction is often used in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, or tier 4? Or we have tier 4 or no? So in tier 2, that's correct. Yeah, I think that. So thank you very much for your participating and attendance this. Anyway, so let's to have a question. If you have any question, yeah, you can raise your hand. I'm not sure if I can here see the. So let me stop sharing. Okay. So any question? Yeah, any question?
Dr. Muhammad, there is 2 questions in Q&A.
Okay. So now, can I implement an individual personal plan at RTI Tier 2 and Tier 3 for my students? I'm not sure what do you mean that individual personal plan or individual educational plan. Yes, I think that Tier 1 for all students, and here the general educator can provide interventions, effective interventions for all students in Tier 2 and Tier 3. In Tier 2, some of the students here receive more intensive and strategies and interventions for some of the students here, as I told you that. And in tier 3, more individualized for students and for. So I think that in tier through yes. The other question, okay, can you give us a little scenario of the difference between differentiation and differentiation? Actually is the individualized lesson plan for each student to ensure that or to maximize everyone potential. So in differentiated or instruction of type of instruction, the same material that we can provide it for all the students based on their ability, based on different actually difficulty that you students they have received. The inclusion, we have inclusion, we have inclusive education, we have mainstreaming, and here the literature actually is differ. Some of them said that like inclusion and inclusive education and mainstreaming are the same terms and they can use interchangeably. And others, yeah, saying like there's a little difference between them. So inclusion, when we say inclusion may be in the school, in the community, in the work sites, in companies, etc., and different types of inclusion. Regarding the inclusive education is education for all students without or except regardless or doesn't exclude anyone. I hope that I answered the different question. So what should be the strategy for adult learners? Actually, the different strategies that I said during the tier 1, for example, providing feedback, we can use it actually for both adults and children. Regarding the questioning, if you pose any question and how to correct for your students
Muhammad, it will be available on the portal. They need, and I repeat this is several times on the chat. It's available. Yes, some of them still, we are uploading it, but it's available in the portal. It will be all presentation, all recorded session, and your certificate. To be able to download it, you need to access the portal. Otherwise, you will not be able to have the certificate. Colleagues, Maha, she explained this several times in her introductory session each day. I'm also uploading PDF file step by step to access the portal on the chat box. So please take care of this and access the portal so you will be able to access the material, the recorded session. Please share the link board. We shared it several times, Siddiq. In PDF, you need to go through, download the PDF and use the information inside, please.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad, for this clarification. Because many questions about the PowerPoint presentation. Please follow what Dr. Muhammad said. I'm not sure if we have another question, more questions. Yeah.
Allow me to answer this, Dr. Muhammad. If you are unable to find the folder of EDU 2030, please send an email to the registration email that you receive. So they will help you with accessing the information.
Anyway, so if we have no more questions, I would like to thank you again for actually joining us today about our presentation about RTI, and I hope that covered the two topics about UDL and about RTI, although each of one need maybe one class or more, and I hope to see you, or maybe next program will be face to face. Thank you very much and have a nice night.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed Al-Rashaida, for the great and informative presentation. Hope that everybody enjoyed our session today, and see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. for our last module, the special accommodation and support for students with disabilities. Have a great evening.
Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Maha. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, all of you. Thank you.
You can leave the sessions now, Dr. Mohammed and Dr. Fateha. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.